Just checking to see if this is streaming correctly. How did this get moved up here? It was like down here. It was bigger. Just randomly reset. Okay. Let's try this again. Let's see if I'm live. Let's see if I'm live. Okay, I should be live. I should be live. Hey everybody. Okay, so I wanted to talk about RIOT games, revenue sharing, TSM training, the split, athlete salaries, and the mortal scrims that Double brought up. Talk a little bit about the politics behind scrimmages. Okay, so to start off, I wanted to talk about a little bit of my philosophy towards training this split, and it was essentially that let's do the things that pro athletes do, which is when I looked at the other teams, essentially we had a bunch of young coaches who were trying to figure out how to make training more effective. And they did various things such as like, getting people to the gym, making sure they had workout routines. CLG tried to make sure that like their athletes had balanced lives, hobbies and stuff like that. They tried making sure they had good support structure and good cooks and kind of all that sort of stuff. Their goal was to make things more effective. And knowing the science behind elite performance, as I do, the neurological aspect, you understand that there's a component of just repetition involved in the development of an elite skill. And the simplest story that I can give is that of hammer throwing in the Olympics. So to this day, nobody has been able to break the records set in the 70s in hammer throwing in the Olympics. And the reason is because the USSR did two things at that time. First of all, they recruited track and field athletes from all over the USSR. So there was just a larger sample size of people recruited in the first place and tested and prepared for this life. But the second thing they did was that they supported them 100%, right? It was communism, and they were like, we want to win to prove that our economic model is superior. So these hammer throwers in the 70s did a lot more hammer throws than any current modern hammer thrower can do, because current modern hammer throwers don't make enough money to really support themselves on their sport, completely, and they can't all in as much on training, because let's say they're sponsor supported, they need to do sponsor obligations, sponsor activations, they might need to have a part-time job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that the increase in training technique that we've had in strength building over the last 46 years hasn't offset just the sheer number of throws that hammer throwers were able to put out in their careers, in their lifespans, in that time. And it doesn't seem to matter that we have improved our training technique, because it's a skill, and it just takes tens of thousands of throws to achieve the kind of distance that we see in the world records, which have yet to be broken. So our philosophy, our driving philosophy going into the split was similar to that of most professional athletes, or most athletes that want to compete at the world-class level. And that means they want to be one of the 0.02% of performers globally. And that is that as people try to work more effectively, that you try to work more effectively and also harder. So we tried to work just as effectively as all the other LCS teams. We prioritized that 20 minutes between the scrim blocks, tried to make sure that it was the most effective 20 minutes possible. We did the same things like working out, and increasing our livelihood, but then we just worked harder than them. We also scrimmed more blocks the entire split. We could not land any LCS squads for nighttime training, for evening training. We were training with challenger teams in the evening because we couldn't get anybody to scrim with us. I'm not saying they're lazy. I'm just saying that they were lazy compared to us. And then again, that we would get up in the morning, and when other teams were doing their gyms and stuff like that, we would have already finished our gym, and we would be doing VOD review. and studying the game. So because of that, when we entered the finals and we played bad and C9 played bad and it was just kind of bad League of Legends all around, our fundamentals were kind of the same as their advanced strategy. So when everything broke down and we just like kind of went by instinct, our fundamental instincts were just better than theirs, and so we were able to pull out a fairly okay win. And that's just like the truth of sport. Like, it doesn't really matter if somebody else is like working better than you. If you're working better than them and harder than them or more than them, you get better than them. That's kind of how it functions in team sport. So what I want to talk about then is like essentially how you accomplish this. You accomplish this by like tracking player burnout, tracking mental recruitment and physical resources of the body. And just as in any sport, you push the limits of that training and that prep to the maximum, and then you draw back right before the person breaks. And you do that over and over and over again. And that's the way that every single world-class athlete trains. So it's very different from average people. So as average people, you and me and whoever else is watching this, it's just an average person. Like, we get to do things for a balanced life. We get to like watch TV in the evenings if we want, or like take a day off, or decide we want to be unmotivated one day and not go to the gym, or like, eat something when we feel like it, or visit with a friend, or stay up late, or these things. We just have choice. We have balance in life. We try to become well-being. We try to like improve our well-being and kind of like entertain ourselves and enjoy our life. Okay, and that is fundamentally different from the way that like high performance is. High performance does not allow for a balanced life. Well-being is still possible. You can still have a good, you can still have a mentally like satisfying, strong, and like resilient life, and you can still enjoy yourself, but you don't get to be balanced. You don't get to like have this kind of like balanced approach to life. It's just if you did that, other people would be better than you. Okay, so what that means is that you don't get to take a day off. You don't get to eat what you want. The players don't get to not take fish oil in the morning when I give it to them. They don't get to not take vitamin D. They don't get to like control their diet before a game. They don't get to socialize in the evenings. They don't get to stay up late because we force them to sleep because it's important. They don't get to work out whenever they want. They have this window that they can work out, and if they don't do it then, they're out of luck. They don't get to like decide that they just want to like go somewhere and take a little trip, or that they have a sick day. They don't get to have sick days. They don't get to randomly decide they want to take a vacation. Instead, they sacrifice all that willingly in order to achieve something that few members of the human species get to achieve, which is to be at a world-class level in a craft. And in this particular craft, it's League of Legends. Okay, now, not everybody who does that gets to make a living from it. Some people choose a stupid craft, like, I don't know, audio engineering, and they like sacrifice everything in their life to become the world's best audio engineer, and they get paid like slightly more money. They don't get to be paid like an Olympic athlete. But then some people choose smart, and they choose a good craft, like, I don't know, like running, or football, or soccer, for you Americans. And then all of a sudden, they get to make millions of dollars when they become an elite level player. So when I look at the players that I'm training, and I look at the Olympic swimmers that I've had the opportunity to work with, Olympic swimmer one that I've had the opportunity to work with, I see a similar level of commitment and sacrifice for this life. At a similar age, by the way, as well. We're not talking about like older people here. But the kind of like value that a LCS athlete brings to Riot Games and the amount of compensation that they get for this sacrifice is not balanced right now, in my opinion. Now, people like, I know Riot is arguing that, okay, well then the orgs need to pay the players more money, and the problem that's come up recently, as you've seen, is that the orgs do not have more money to pay the players. Despite the fact that orgs are selling for millions of dollars, they aren't actually worth that. That's just like the market is like, it's like when you go to like a like an antique auction and people build millions of dollars on a lamp, doesn't mean the lamp is actually worth millions of dollars. Like, that would be stupid. Lamps aren't worth that much. It just means that's the value that people attribute to it. So these teams are being valued at like exorbitant amounts of money that they're not actually pulling in the kind of revenue to reflect that. It's a bubble. So what I want to talk about is like essentially that Riot Games is not like the Riot Games trajectory. So let's understand what happened. 5 years ago, Riot Games was like, okay, we want to build an esport, and we're not going to go the Valve route. We're not going to do the tournament circuit. We're going to build an ecosystem, a league that can support many more people. And so they did so, and it was fantastic. They worked really hard to produce a sustainable source of income for thousands and thousands of people around the world that are like in all aspects of the sport, you know, from broadcasting to personalities to tech to lights and sound and production and creatives and all of this stuff. And they created an ecosystem that they're feeding with their money that is like supporting all of this, and it's incredible. But what has happened in the last year or two is that the viewership has exploded. It's exploded to a level that we see in professional sports, and that we are familiar with that the value that these athletes in professional sports, which is now an entertainment. So once a sport gets to a certain level of viewership, we call it entertainment. And let's talk about how essentially, like as a market, Riot Games has been rewarded for this ecosystem they built. So the fundamental concept of like extracting money from a market is that you sell a product, right? And if you don't have a product to sell, you advertise somebody else's product and they pay you a cut. And Riot like is incentivized by the market. This is how marketplace works, to sell their own product that they create. So every single sale that they can capture from the, like say people pay attention to the LCS. That's what you do when you watch the LCS on Sundays. You pay attention to League of Legends. And Riot Games tries to capture as much of that attention as possible to sell their product. Their product is a digital product, is a skin in the game. Okay, and it makes them money. And then they use that money to support everything. And for them, that's the most efficient path for revenue, because let's say they rent your attention to Coca-Cola for the LCS, and Coca-Cola puts a bunch of ads, and you like watch the ads and decide you want to go get a Coke, and then you go buy a Coke. Well, Coca-Cola gets some of that money, and then they pay some of it to Riot for marketing, right? But that's less efficient because Riot Games gets less of your money. Coke gets most of it, Riot gets some of it. If you go buy a skin, Riot gets all of it. They get control. Okay, so it's important to understand that the market is incentivizing the structure as it is now, and that's why it developed that way. And the market is not incentivizing change. So Riot's biggest competitors are Valve. Valve has like much more revenue sharing for the teams that they used, you know, to attract orgs into CS:GO and into Dota. Why did they do that? Because they're competing with Riot. Okay, they're the competitor. Riot's the top dog, and they need to. I mean, last time I checked, Valve had like between 10 and 15 million monthly active users. This was like a couple weeks ago when I checked, I think 4 weeks ago. Riot still has like over 100 million monthly active users. Okay, so we're talking like a magnitude of 10x scale in terms of the amount of attention and the amount of revenue that like is attainable with this game. So Valve is forced to do these revenue shares in order to compete with Riot. Now, of course, they might do it just because that's how their company's structured and that's their philosophy. And it could be like, I think Riot Games is overly controlling. I think that like their DNA as a company is just like, well, they want control of everything, and that's not good or bad. It just is, right? So that's one way to think about like kind of what's going on there and why their approach is different than Valve. But also you have to understand that Valve are the little boys and they need to compete. So Valve is not close to actually competing with Riot for attention. So there's no market pressure on Valve to change their structure. And they're making loads of money with LCS as a marketing tool, I believe. They're the only ones who can answer that question and say how much LCS makes them as a marketing tool. But you don't market and spend money on marketing unless it's making you money. Like you would have got out of business if you spent more money on marketing than you had on intake, right? Okay, so they have to be metricing it. They have to understand how much they're making from it in order to spend properly on it. So that's just like, it's a given, okay? Now, so what is going to force change? What is going to force change in this system? If you look at it from a pure systems perspective, there's another thing besides the market and competitors that forces change, and that is the labor market, okay? So when you have labor disputes, it supersedes customer disputes in a way, or like competitor disputes, where like the market is working on them. So what we have right now shaping up in League of Legends is a labor dispute between the orgs that are making Riot lots of money and Riot, which is basically keeping most of that money. Okay, and the orgs are saying, we want a bigger piece of that pie, like an underpaid, assembly worker from the Ford plants, back before there were labor rights. And Riot is saying, like, no, we don't want to give it to you. We want to keep it all ourselves. Of course they do. This is how, like, that's not evil, okay? That's how capitalism works. So if you don't like it, move to Russia or someplace where, okay, Russia's a bad example now. Root to China. There you go. Although China's a really bad example because when I was in rural China, all I saw was black market capitalism. I didn't see any communism anywhere. So I don't know even where they have like a completely controlled economy nowadays. But yeah, anyway, understand that what they're doing is not evil. It's just business. Okay. So if you look at like what can bring change to the system, it's going to be this labor dispute. And fundamentally, like Riot wants 3 parties in the labor dispute. They want players, orgs, and Riot, because that would distribute money most fairly towards like the players, and Riot would get to keep a bigger chunk of the pie because they have most of the power. It would be less consolidated, right? And the orgs want power consolidated with them, so they want the players on their side, and they want to consolidate players and orgs together to negotiate against Riot. And that would be like the most, like, then they would get more of the pie, essentially, and they would be able to distribute it. So me, I'm of course like biased. I want orgs and players to side together in order to get more of the pie, and then they can distribute more of that pie to athlete salaries, because I think the amount of money that these athletes are making for Riot and the way that we have to train now, the way that it is possible to train now, I predict that like other orgs are going to copy what we're doing, because that's how Korea trains. That's why they have a higher level of like performance and so like this model is now possible. There's sports companies now owning teams. There's like high pressure for performance, and people are just going to understand that like training begets skill, and the more you train, the more you get better. And so like that's going to be the life, and that these guys, like the problem is that these athletes are going to work, and they're working these 15-hour days, and they're making millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars theoretically for Riot Games, and then like their brethren who are streaming are making 10 times what they're making, and the like upper level employees in Riot are making more than them too. I would surmise, because and I think that's unfair, because I don't think that the skill set that a 0.0002% population elite athlete brings and the value that they bring to Riot is the same as like a manager or like maybe an executive, but not like a manager or like an upper level employee or a creative necessarily. So world-class talent is compensated in the entertainment industry at a disproportionate amount because they bring disproportionate value to the market, and that value is transferred then to the companies there. So that's why like elite athletes get paid such exorbitant salaries, and that is what needs to happen in League of Legends if the trajectory continues next year. So like for example, Spring Split next year, I plan to like, if the revenue stays the same, I plan to dial it back a little in training, because I want my athletes to peak in the summer split where they are playoffs, like taking them to Worlds. I don't want them to peak in the spring split because like they're not getting compensated enough for their motivation to carry through to their like standard like full life. Like I don't want to like it's 10 months of the year now, the season, right? If you combine both splits. And if we win the first split, then we train all in the off season, and that's an incredible amount of time to be like absolutely all in. Even Michael Phelps, like although he didn't take a single day off between like 2004 2008, I think he took like a week off, and then a couple days off in the first year, and then no days off for the next 3 years. Even he has like more variation in his training because he's training a physical body. Right? He's training muscles. It takes time to recover. He's limited in what he can do every day. And he's compensated appropriately for the amount of value that he brings with his accomplishments, right? So he can maintain it. But these players, like, they bring more in terms of sacrifice because they're not training a physical, like, muscle. So they can actually do it with low injury rates, and so we can train even longer. But then they're not compensated, like, at the equal amount to the value that they deliver. for entertainment to the world, and for like the skill set that they have as being like a top performer, one of the top, like 1,000 athletes in the world of like hundreds of millions of people who play this game. So like I would like to see like much higher compensation. If my players get like much higher compensation, then I can justify pushing them to the level that an NBA star, an NFL star would be pushed, right? And like risking their mental and physical health for that. But if not, if they're just making the same as like an average employee at like an average company, even if it's an upper level employee, then how do you justify my coaching in a style that risks their physical and mental health, right? Because you're always risking that. When you push the human body to its limit of performance, you're bound to get breaks. You're bound to break things, okay? Just like we did twice this split, when we pushed ourselves to our limit, and I track physical and psychological variables religiously so that I can dial back at just the right moment right before we break, okay? Because that's how you push limits. But that's just like the truth of elite sport, and so it's really dangerous. And unless the compensation is kind of like equal to that danger and the value that they bring, it's really not, in my opinion, moral to kind of like do that at like an average salary. So like my plan, if the current status quo remains, is that like you prioritize summer split, you prioritize like a solid standing and spring split with as much effectiveness, drawing and efficiency as possible in the training that allows for like kind of a more balanced life and maybe more streaming and things like that, and more things that actually make money. Because remember, these athletes are sitting here training like this and looking over and watching their streamers make 10x what they do. Some streamers make as much as LCS teams because they can monetize every moment of their streaming, right? And we don't get to monetize anything except our uniform spot, which like the sponsors are saying like, I don't get any value from that anymore. So like it's clear. I've measured it for a year. Your like logo on your uniform does not bring me any more sales. So explain why I should sponsor you again, right? That's the status that we're in. So yeah. So I am very hopeful that like this system is going to improve because like I don't think that Riot is evil. I have seen nothing like evil in the way that they operate. I see them obeying market laws, right? And here we have another like system coming up, a labor law, and it's going to like apply pressure to the system, and the system is going to morph and change just like it has according to the market throughout these years. So that's, yeah, I'm very optimistic about it. And I think that the best thing that the teams can do is try to unify with the players and present a unified negotiated stance. And I think the best thing that Riot could do is try to get the players in a room and the orgs in a room and negotiate with each of them individually. Yeah, so that's how I see it. Now, I think that it's really important to understand that revenue streams need to be opened up, and I think you should watch Marty's interview, like Splice's CEO's interview, right now with the Score Reports, or the Score Esports, because he talks a lot about like the numbers that he's found in his research, and they line up a lot with the numbers that I found in my research, so I don't want to repeat them. Just go watch his interview. It's really interesting. But one of the problems with like improving the performance level of the LCS right now is that like look around at the coaching staffs, okay? What age range do you see predominant? It's like 22, 23-year-olds, because these are the people that can survive in Santa Monica living in a gaming house on the kind of salary that teams can afford, okay? You can't get a professional coach like, in their mid-30s. So like if you look at coach careers, there's a really clear trajectory of coach careers. You're an athlete until you're like early 20s. You transition to coaching. You coach for 10 years, getting experience. In your mid-30s, you usually achieve the level of like an assistant to a head coach or head coach of like a lower level club. And then from there, you start peaking and you start attaining like head coach and elite level coach status in your early 40s, okay? This is how coaching careers go. So like for me this year, as a mid-30s coach with 10 years of experience and 2 years of training, like it's like coaching in the LCS is like taking candy from a baby, okay? Because like my competitors are all 23-year-olds who have no clue what they're doing, except for Tony and Robert Yip. And Reaper, because he has like 3 years of experience, okay? But like still, they're like in the beginning of their careers, right? They're little virgins, little babies, and they're kind of figuring stuff out, right? So like if you want to have like a head coach who can like manage a coaching staff and run a high performance environment, you need to be recruiting people like in the middle of their careers, like in their mid 30s or early 40s. But these people need more stability. And right now, sponsors only provide a revenue stream for a year, I think. So like, let's say you look at a team and the sponsor's like, okay, I'll sign with you. And the team says, great, I'm going to hire a coach. Like, and I'm going to try to pay him for 3 years. And the sponsor's like, well, I'm signing for a year because, like, what if you get relegated? And I don't know how much value you're going to bring me, and I need to measure everything about this market. So I'll sign you for a year, and next year I'll sign you again. Okay? Now, all of a sudden, you're an org, and you have no revenue. Okay? You have revenue for 2015, and then you have zero, except whatever the stipend, like, RIOT gives you, right? So you can't attract, like, mid-career talent with children, etc., to your organization if you can only offer, like, a couple month employment at will, like job with low pay in the middle of California. You know, one of the most expensive places to live in the entire world, in the middle of LA. It's just not going to happen. So, like, if we want to see like an improvement in these players' lives, an improvement in the way that their like mentality is handled, an improvement in player environments, we want to see less Dardocs and more like Kobe Bryant's, where like that kind of intense, fierce competition is channeled into the game professionally. You need professional coaches. You need people like who are going to grow into like their careers, and for that, you need to be able to sustain this past the age of 23. Okay, and like even players can't sustain this past the age of 23 right now because like a professional, like once people graduate from college and go to the NBA and NFL, like I would say the 18 to 22-year-old level of esport athlete is like college age, just like NCAA. They should live in a gaming house. They should have strict control of their lives. They should have controlled diets and regimes and everything. I think once you get double F's age, you're a 5-year veteran, 23 years old, you can bring it in training and check out at night. You should be making the kind of money to sustain an individual life. And you should be like able to check out at the end of the day and go to your house that you're able to afford because you're an elite athlete. Overlays over my face? What the hell? There, okay. You should be able to like sustain, like you should be able to check out at the end of the day and yeah, and like have something for it, right? And that way you can extend your career. You can be a 24, 25, 26-year-old like LCS athlete and still like push yourself to the level of like the 19 and 20-year-olds because like you're getting the value for it. You know, you see that like other 23-year-olds who are entering the workforce, graduating from college, who are your peers, like they're starting to make the same salary as you in a few years, and you're like, wow, I'm working 10 times as hard as them. I have no ability for like a stable kind of like relationship. I'm like 10 months out of the year I sign my life away and I can't make any other money because I'm so focused on training. Why would I sustain that past the age of like 24, 25 when I could like go stream and make 10 times as much, or I could like become a YouTube content creator and make 10 times as much and like also have a normal life. So like you have to be so driven, but like let's say you're driven for 5 years and you're already a champion, like there's nothing to keep you in the game at that point. So like that's a problem, and it's a problem not just for these players, but it's a problem for like attracting coaches and keeping them around to develop into their like true coaching careers, or even attracting like true coaching talent now. So for all of those reasons, I think that like stuff is going to have to change in terms of compensation levels in the sport if we want it to be like an elite level sport. If you want it just to be gamers like playing for like 6 to 8 hours a day and like trolling and having fun and being bad and then like, you know, streaming at night, then that's fine. We don't need to sustain high levels of performance, and we don't need to train the way that we do. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's a global competitive sport, and athletes want to win, and people want to see teams that win. And that entertainment and that drive and that arena that you guys demand and that I demand as a fan is causing this phenomena to happen. And so the compensation and the revenue share needs to be looked at for those reasons alone, in my opinion. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about TSM training. Essentially, like what we did this split was what I described earlier. We just we took no days off. We trained twice as much as the other teams, and that's an easy way to get high performance. People say, okay, we're going to work more efficiently, and we say, okay, we're going to work more efficiently and longer and harder. And we can, because there's low injury rates, right? You can't, like repetitive stress injury can be managed so that it doesn't happen. And then we focus on learning, we focus on systems, and we manage to like get a little out of every single day of training, a little more than everybody else. So it's possible. So now that it's possible, why doesn't everybody do it? And the reason is because some people don't know how to do it, but mostly because like the motivation is not there, because like the thing you have to sacrifice for that life is insane. To be a global performer and to like do that, it's just like it's another level. Okay, that's what elite performance is. It's another level. You don't get to have like a normal life anymore. It's like a privilege, right? So yeah, that's why I want to see compensation at the level of pro sports, for that to kind of be a sustainable approach, because I think it's beautiful when that happens. There's nothing I like more than watching like athletes push themselves to the brink, but there's nothing I hate more than doing that with my athletes and seeing them bring intense value to millions of people's lives and getting compensated jack shit for it. Now, I'm not putting this on TSM. TSM pays insane salaries. As far as I can tell from my conversations with Reggie, they're running at peak. So everything that they make in league, they pay into league. That's like he's running in the black, like on the line. He's like, no, not 14 hours of hard practice 5-6 days a week. It's 7 days a week. We didn't take a day off. Or when are you confusing this? We didn't take a day off, really. I mean, we kind of took like 3 days off, but I want you to understand that we just went like 14 weeks of training, 14 hours a day, with 3 days off and a travel day. Okay? And it wasn't like optional. It was like, we have to do this, okay, if we want to win. Anyway, so yeah, let me check the overlay again. Yeah, okay, so go away, B. Yeah, so what I want to see is like orgs want to sign their players for multi-million-dollar contracts. They all want to do it. They just don't have the money. It's all locked up, right? It's being controlled by Riot, which is fine. That's not an evil thing. It's just how the marketplace has been structured. But now there's a labor movement that's trying to change that, and we're going to see how much of the revenue they unlock. Now, I personally think the best thing to do is to unlock control of the broadcast rights. Let me explain why. For Riot Games, for like the way that capitalism works and the sale of a product, the maximum use for them, for the attention generated by the marketing of the LCS, is to sell a skin. Okay, but that's very inefficient in terms of capitalizing on the value in the stream. Okay, because like let's say like 20,000 people watch the LCS. Let's say 100 of them buy scrims or buy skins. For Riot, that's perfect. They get the maximum benefit of that money. Okay, but let's say that like there's thousands of people that don't want skins, and they want another product that Riot Games doesn't make. Like let's say they want a soft drink, or they want a shoe, or something like that. So then, like Riot Games can either make that product and sell it to them. Like for example, merchandising. They've started to make like plushies and like t-shirts, stuff like that. They've started to make like all that stuff because people want those things. But there are other things that people want that Riot will never make, like shoes, or like soda pop, for example. And for that, what you should do is sell that attention to those companies so that they can sell their products to them. Okay, and Riot Games is not incentivized to extract maximum value from the broadcast, because for them maximum value is in-game items. If you give control of the broadcast rights to the teams and you have them negotiate the value of it, the teams will be at the peak of the like desire for maximizing the revenue from the broadcast. They will negotiate better than any party, including Riot Games, for optimization of broadcast revenue with the third party, right? Because that will be their primary revenue source, right? So for Riot, their primary revenue source is not the marketing generated by the LCS; it's the sale of in-game skins. If the team's primary revenue source is the broadcast, they will be incredibly incentivized to negotiate super strongly for maximizing the potential money extraction from that one source, and therefore they will do the best job of anybody. So that is why I think that like just let capitalism and the marketplace do its work and give control of the broadcast in terms of like negotiation for the rights to broadcast it to the teams, and they will, I promise Riot Games, they will extract far more value from it than you ever could hope for, because it will be their lifeblood. It will be everything to them. Okay, that's how it works, right? So yeah, so that's my solution. And that's what I believe in terms of like, because I'm like, I believe in the market, I believe in market forces, I believe in like optimization of those systems, and that is the system that like is going to optimize that source of revenue. Okay, I wanted to end on Immortal Scrims because I didn't get a chance to on my Periscope. The thing like kind of ended accidentally because my battery died. So we went to Toronto. We only had 4 scrim partners possible because we couldn't scrim the teams in LA anymore. So we could only scrim CLG, C9, and Immortals. And us, I guess. Okay, yeah. So obviously you can't scrim C9 because we were going to play them. So we could only scrim CLG and Immortals, and C9 was really smart or conniving, depending on how you look at it, right? Because they like before. Typically, what you do is you wait till semifinals are over, and then you book the week of scrims. So, like C9 was bothering me to book and book and book and book, and I was like, I'm not gonna book until I know who we're playing, dude. So finally, I just like booked with them. So I was like, just stop bothering me. So I booked with them, and then like they won semifinals, we won semifinals. So I canceled, or like I was like, all right, we're not playing anymore. I canceled with them, and I went to go book. And CLG was like, no, we're training C9 that day. So I went to Immortals, and like Immortals like, no, we're training C9 that day. So they just like double booked everybody for every day, as far as I can tell. Which, whatever, like more power to them if they want to be like conniving people. Like that's strategy, so that's strategy. I'm not gonna like hate on them for it. But then what happened was like Immortals was like, okay, great, we'll train with C9, like all that we booked, and we'll do some evening stuff too, sure, for them, but not for you because we want them to win. Whatever. That's like absolutely their prerogative, and we did the same thing in the regular split with the teams that we wanted to make better, you know? Or that actually I had the opposite philosophy. Personally. For me, the strategy was always maximum extraction of useful scrim for TSM. Number 1. Okay. But that in its own is politics, right? So but the problem with CLG was too honorable. So like I don't know if you put this on Immortals or C9. If you put this on Immortals for like being strategic, or if you put this on C9 for being conniving, or if you put this on CLG for being too honorable, but they didn't want to cancel on C9 and scrim us instead. So that was pretty stupid in my opinion, but like I can't really hate on them because they were like, well, we booked this time and we promised to be there, so we're going to be there, and we'll try to squeeze in an evening block with you one day if we can, just to like compensate or whatever. And they did warm us up on the day of, so that was helpful. But like, like I was like, why would you not want to cancel on C9? They booked every team on every day, and then just like cancel on whoever they wanted to. Like, they were obviously being conniving and planning on canceling on people anyway, or smart, depending on how you look at it. So whatever. So yeah, like the only thing that pissed me off about the whole week was that we couldn't train as hard as I wanted to. So we just literally could not find anybody to train us in the evening, and that Immortals had an injury, so we missed a full day of training because Immortals had an injury, and then they wouldn't cancel halfway on C9 and scrim us halfway the next day, and CLG wouldn't help us make up for that injury day, so we couldn't train on that day because they were training C9, which was frustrating. And then, like, so like it's okay that they had an injury. I don't care about that. But then like, yeah, then they were just like, they were super like passive aggressive. I don't know. Like, so when I wanted CLG to cancel on C9, I opened up a Skype chat to both of them and I said, CLG, will you cancel on C9 and scrim us, to the 3 of us? I didn't go behind their back and say like, hey, tell them that Zach is sick and then scrim us secretly, like on a phone or anything. I like legit said to like Jack's face, like, CLG should cancel on you and scrim us because they want us to win. And Tony was like, no, we're too honorable. And I was like, okay, whatever. More honor to you. But then like from Immortals I get stuff like, okay, we're gonna end the scrim block early because we want to go to dinner. And I'm like, no, let's finish. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll finish. Like, or like, hey, can we have an evening scrim? And they're like, no, I think we're done for the day. And then like we see them on the tournament realm like scrimming C9. I'm like, I don't care that you're doing that. You're just shitters for trying to like pretend that you're not or something like that. Like whatever. So I don't really care like Immortals C9 who wins based on the last week, like for the gauntlet. But what I liked was about 6 weeks ago, C9 got serious, okay? Like TSM serious. So all split long, we're training like harder than every other team. And then all of a sudden, C9 is our evening scrim partner for like the last 6 weeks of the season. They're there every night training with us, okay? They decided to like turn it up a gear. And look, like training brings results, right? So for us, winning the finals is like trying to prove to them that you can't catch up. That like it's not enough that you decided at the last minute that you like wanted to get hardcore and like get good. Like we've been committed to this the entire split. Okay? So like we have to prove to you that like latecomers don't get reward for that. But like I really like the gumption that they've had. I really like the fact that like I got tons and tons of night scrimming blocks with them, and that was, you know, that they're willing to do that. I didn't have to train challenger teams in the evening anymore. Thank you, Team Liquid, like for all the challenger training, by the way. And like occasionally we got to train like Echo Fox and Phoenix One in the evening too and stuff like that. But like it's just more fun to train against like Piglet for our bottom lane because when he wasn't trolling, like he was really good, and like Golden Glue was able to push Soren like really well. So it was just like TLA was like the perfect training partner for like evenings if we couldn't get like a top LCS team, because they have beasts, like laning beasts there in that team. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so I think that like I'm rooting for C9 because they put in so much work this split. They tried really hard. I think they have a feeling of like destiny behind them that they're really committed towards. I think their coaching staff has to fight through a lot of crap. I like their drafts. I think they play incredible drafts, and I think they play super standard, and they draft according to the marketplace, the global marketplace. And here's the thing that I dislike most about LCS teams. I dislike it when there's a strong meta champion and a team says, let's learn the counter. Because what they're saying is like, I can't play that champion to the peak of its abusable state, therefore I will learn the counter to it and try to squeeze by. And I hate that mindset because I think that it's just laziness. Like you should train the strongest possible strategy of the game at every point. And that should be your goal. And if you can't do it, then get good. And so I like teams that say like, this is the meta and this is what we're playing and let's maximize it. And C9 reliably has done that. They say like, this is the meta, this is what we need to play, so we're going to play it. I think maybe except for Vladimir. I don't know if they play Vladimir or not, I forget. I think they keep trying to counter it. I guess that's kind of silly. But yeah, but I think that like teams that try to train up counter strategies run higher risk, higher reward, because like the reason something is meta and globally is usually because it is the least probability, lowest amount of risk, highest probability of success, right? And so that's an easier system to maximize than a like mayhaps like we can get the counter to work kind of system. And so yeah, I prefer that game philosophy. And that's what like Parth and I have adhered to, is like trying to figure out the strongest axioms that exist in the game, trying to understand the game at a fundamental level at every patch, and trying to like always like prepare the strongest 3 compositions, you know, in the game, period. And if you can't play it, you better frickin' learn, because we're going to play it on stage, and you better be good enough to pull it off, or you're going to look like a goon. And we're going to have to trade you for a like franchise player that can actually pull off, you know, meta comps as the meta shifts. So I always tell the players that the #1 skill of an elite League of Legends player is the ability to learn faster than anybody else and to become world class at something new. And so until the patches slow down, until the meta like stabilizes more, like as a philosophy from Riot, that's going to be the case, unfortunately. And yeah, so you have to. What do I think about Thorin's shots on you? He just tweeted about me. Thorin likes to use me for publicity. It's fine. I don't really care. I'm 10 times the coach that he'll ever be, even in his pretend mind where he magically coached Fnatic because he thinks he knows something about coaching. But he doesn't. But he performs a very valuable role for the league community, and I love his shows, and I love his personality, and I love the content that he produces, and I listen to it all the time. And I can't wait to school him on Summoner's Insight. Okay, anyway, yeah. That's what I want to talk about today. Appreciate the tuning in. And I'm going to go take care of the kids and enjoy the rest of my break. /G2 vacation, baby!